Hey everyone, welcome back to Men Need to Be Heard, the channel dedicated to talking about men's issues and the double standards they face in today's society. My name is Dan, and today I'm going to be doing another video in my series debunking common feminist narratives and lies. And today, I've got one of the most outrageous claims of them all. The claim that men can simply just sign away their parental rights if they don't want to be a parent. It's a very common claim stated not just by feminists, but women in general, especially when they're asked about the double standard that exists, where women have the complete freedom to decide if they want to be a parent or not, and if they want to actually financially support it. It usually goes something like this.
There's so much talk about a woman's body, her choice, and like that.
Yeah.
My question is, if we give a woman the right to opt out of motherhood,
Right.
should we also give a man the right to opt out of fatherhood and 18 years of child support?
Well, he could obviously sign his rights away.
I've long lost count at how many times I've heard women make that very claim, especially with regard to men being forced to pay child support for a child that they never wanted to begin with. They trot it out whenever you point out that women have multiple choices when it comes to parenthood, including things like adoption, the safe haven laws, and, well, you know, while men have none of the above. The fact is, women, and feminists in particular, know that to be true. But you see, that doesn't suit their narrative, doesn't fit their victimhood. In fact, highlights the double standard that exists to disprove their victimhood. So they just simply claim that men can sign away their rights anytime they choose, knowing full well that they'll never be asked to prove that that claim is actually true. They know it will simply be accepted as gospel, that if a man decides he doesn't want to be a dad, he can simply sign his rights away. No problem, no consequences, clean break. Sounds simple, right? Well, that is what they want you to believe, but reality? Well, reality says something completely different. The fact is, it's extremely hard for a man to just sign his rights away. So hard, in fact, that a man actually being able to do so is very, very rare. And unlike the feminists, instead of just making that claim, I'm going to break down why it is so hard and how the system actually works, and why, in the end, why men have no real reproductive rights at all. I'm even, in the interest of fairness, going to cover the one rare situation where a man can actually sign away his paternal rights, though not in the way the feminists want you to believe. How often have we heard today's women argue that, well, if a woman has to carry the child for 9 months, the least the man can do is take financial responsibility. That he should accept that responsibility simply because he chose to have sex with her. Of course, at the very same time, they absolve themselves completely of the very same standard. But when you point that out to them, the very next argument they'll make, like clockwork, is to say, well, if he really doesn't want to be a dad, he can just sign his rights away and boom, no child support, no obligations. And as I said earlier, no, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. In reality, a father cannot just sign his parental rights away unless two specific things happen. First, the mother has to agree to let him walk away. And I ask you, when was the last time you heard of a mother saying that she didn't want child support, didn't want to take advantage of that cash cow? Then second, if the mother does agree, the court also has to agree that it's in the best interest of the child to allow the father to walk away from his responsibility. And again, I ask you, what judge is going to say it's in the best interest of a child to not be financially supported? And also, I might add, what judge is going to let the man walk away when they personally benefit from putting the man on child support? Yet I've never heard once, not even one time, a woman mention that part of the equation. And they do so either through ignorance or because they want to deliberately mislead people into believing that it's easy for a man to walk away. It shows you how feminism has long operated, where they take extreme exceptions and present them as the norm, something I've covered repeatedly in this series. And in this particular case, it is technically true that a man can sign his rights away. The facts are, though, that neither of those two things I mentioned earlier, the things that are required to happen in order for the process to go forward, actually do occur, either one individually or for both the mother and the judge to sign off. To get to that point, well, it's literally a 1 in a million chance. And here's the kicker. Even if you found a mother and a judge willing to absolve the father of responsibility, if the state gets involved, and they often do, well, then that man is going to be stuck. He's not going to get any choice in the matter whatsoever. More on that in a few minutes. This is another glaring example of how feminists and women in general take a what if and turn it into an absolute falsehood simply to further their agenda. Something we have to admit they do quite well, as demonstrated by how many women think men can just up and walk away, and do. But I'm not asking you to just believe me. Let's look at some real-life examples of how this plays out. Let's look at a couple of cases that prove the claim made by feminists is completely false. For example, there's the case of Dubé versus Wells from back in 2007, where one Matt Dubé, a man, argued that since he had no choice in the birth of the child, he shouldn't be financially responsible. His argument? The very same one that women don't want to acknowledge. That women can choose to have an abortion, give the child up for adoption, or drop it off at a safe haven and walk away scot-free. But men? Well, not so much. And he asked, why is the standard different for men than it is for women? Why can't men opt out just like women can? To make a long story short, in the end, what was the court's response? Too bad, so sad. Pay up, buddy. Then there was the Alabama case from just a couple of years ago, where a father begged the court to allow him to terminate his parental rights so he wouldn't have to pay child support. Again, the argument that was made was that he did not consent to being a parent, and that he should have the very same right as a woman to simply opt out. The court again denied it, stating that a child's right to financial support outweighs a father's right to opt out. Now, that's just two examples, but I could give you dozens more. Believe me, there's cases in every single state. Yet, despite this plethora of case law saying otherwise, women continue to claim that men can just simply sign their rights away. It is an out-and-out misrepresentation at best and a lie at worst. As I mentioned earlier, the state plays a role in this as well. And you may ask, well, what happens when the mother decides the father doesn't have to pay? When she simply says, I got this, you aren't responsible for anything, I'll just raise the child on my own. Well, as I mentioned, there's another interested party, one whose vested interest trumps that of the mother, the father, and even, I'd argue, the child. And that party is the state. It all comes down to one simple fact. The government doesn't want to be on the hook for child welfare costs. If a mom applies for any kind of assistance, any whatsoever, they'll go after the father for child support, whether she wants them to or not. Hell, they'll even go after a man who may not even be the father or has been proven to not be the father and tag him with years of support if they feel it's in the state's best interest. Again, there's a huge body of case law that supports this and justifies it, which again disproves the claims made by women and feminists. So you might now be asking, when can a man actually sign away his rights? When can he opt out of fatherhood and the responsibilities thereof? And can he, in fact, actually do that? Let's answer that, shall we? The simple answer is yes, there is an opportunity where a man can sign away his rights. As I said earlier, in the interest of fairness, I want to share that scenario where a man can indeed terminate his rights and walk away completely from financial responsibility. And I actually alluded to what that scenario was earlier, which is he can do so when and only when there's another man ready to step in and accept financial responsibility for the child. For example, if the mother gets remarried to someone else and that guy, the now stepfather, wants to legally adopt the child, then yes, in theory, the biological father can sign away his rights because there is another man willing to take his place financially and legally. But here's the catch. Mom still has to want to walk away from the financial windfall she gets in child support, something they rarely, if ever, do. And again, it still has to be approved by a judge. And if the court thinks the father's financial support is necessary, even in the slightest bit, they're likely going to deny it. Heck, the judge may decide to refuse to allow it simply because the biological dad makes more money or has more wealth than the potential adoptive father, and then rule based on the so-called standard of living precedent, which states that the child should have the very same standard of living post-divorce that they might have had if the parents were still together. Again, in theory, it is possible for the man to walk away, but in practice, well... So to recap it all, the absolute indisputable fact of the matter is, when it comes to reproductive rights, women hold all the cards. They can choose to be a parent or not. They can choose to terminate the pregnancy or not. They can choose to give the child up for adoption, even without the father's consent. They can simply leave the kid at a hospital or a firehouse and walk away with absolutely no obligation whatsoever to support the child, now or any time in the future. But if a man wants to walk away, he has no such rights, no such options. It's tough luck, buddy. Pay up. You not only don't get to pass go, you not only don't get the $200, you're likely going to be on the hook for more, much more. The system doesn't give men an opt-out button. Yet we keep hearing this lie from feminists that men can simply sign their rights away anytime they want. At the end of the day, we need to stop pushing this false narrative, and we need to call out those who spread it. If we're going to have an honest conversation about parental responsibility and parental rights, then we have to start by acknowledging that men do not get the same choices that women do. That in fact, they don't have any rights at all. So the next time someone throws the men can just sign their rights away nonsense at you, hit them with the facts that I've described earlier. Ask them to show you the case law that proves a man can just simply say, I don't want to be a dad, sign a piece of paper, and then walk away. Then sit back and watch them scramble. It's actually kind of fun, especially when they've believed that lie for so long and find out for themselves that it was a lie. This double standard exists largely for a few reasons. The primary ones being that feminism wants people to believe that men don't want to be fathers, don't want to support their children, that they simply just want to walk away. And thus, it's very easy for them to do so because, well, the state will make it easy. The whole patriarchy thing. Yet reality is completely different. And if we truly want to have an honest discussion, as I said, we need to acknowledge that. And we need to take steps to allow men and women to have the very same rights. If women are allowed to walk away, then men should be as well. Or if men are going to be held accountable, well, then women should be as well. It's called equality. I mean, aren't we all supposed to be supporting that? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are on the matter. And if you found this breakdown helpful, be sure to like the video and do me the favor of subscribing to the channel and hit the notification bell so you know when I release other videos. And if you've got a story about unfair child support rulings, share it. We want to hear it. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time on Men Need to Be Heard.